folks, you may not realize this, but in one point in time, this town of Scottdale was actually the richest town in all of Westmoreland County. And a lot of the beautiful architecture in the homes here are a testament to that fact. Hi, welcome to Around the Town with Marilyn Forbes. For today's special show, we're going to be checking out the history of Scottdale and some of the fabulous architecture that is here in this borough. There's over 20 different styles of homes right here in this small area, and we're going to bring some of those to you folks here to enjoy today. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Okay, folks, now for the first part of our show, we are actually here in the Historic District in downtown Scottdale. Well, I guess Scottdale Borough, should I say.
Yes.
And Susan here has joined us. She is going to explain about the, what do I call it, the sign toppage?
The Scottdale Historic District Toppers.
Toppers, okay.
Yes.
All right, now how did this program begin? Tell us a little bit about the history of the history program.
Well, the Scottdale Historical Society has been very active trying to make people aware of things, and they were on the committee that was in 2009 helped to get T&B planning to write a plan how to develop this. And when they did that, they had 4 steps to the plan, and the first action was to put toppers up.
Oh, okay.
So in 2018, 8 years later, we got started on that, and we have our first round of toppers established now.
Okay, now let's back up. Where exactly is the historic district here in the borough?
Well, the district starts over on Walnut Avenue.
Okay.
And it goes from Walnut toward Arthur Avenue.
Okay.
And down Arthur, and at the top of Grove Street, and down through, clear down to Jacobs Creek, which includes some of the business district.
This is, and there, if I understand, there's 400 houses?
There are at least 400 of the original structures from Scottdale still existing.
That's amazing. Okay, now, you said that there was a couple different groups who...
Yes. The Historical Society, the Chamber of Commerce was listed. The Scottdale Borough Council voted and approved this plan, and they recently reapproved the plan that we can continue with it. We have Bill Callahan from Pittsburgh has come in and looked at Scottdale different times and loves this town, and he's in charge of Western Pennsylvania from Harrisburg over. And he thinks we also have something very worthy of preservation here.
Awesome. Now, you said that your first wave is it already in place, or all of the ones that you have now in place for the first?
Almost all the first ones that we ordered are up. There were a couple we couldn't put up because this post need
I was going to ask you about that. Okay.
And that's pretty expensive, and we didn't originally plan for that, but we were able to order 18 signs. And with those signs, they have to keep a couple extras in case there's ever damage to one. But we tried to pick a corner of houses that are very worthy of being notable in Scottdale. We have a very unique style of architecture in town, so we want to try to get all of them that are in the historic district with corners first.
Okay, sure.
And then from there, we're going to, the goal is to get all the corners done. There are 24 streets in this area, and that'll take a lot of toppers.
Right. It's pretty interesting, too. They really put a lot of thought into the toppers themselves. Excuse me, the color, the design.
Yes.
You folks really put a lot of thought into it.
Yes. And the reason that they are shaped the way they are, we looked at other towns and municipalities. This was similar. We liked the little bit of an archway that's on the top. And with that arch is where we put the date 1874, which was when Scottdale was incorporated. Prior to that, it was known as Fountain Mills. So we wanted to go with the 1874 date. And then we also used the color brown because the national parks have used brown on their signage in their historic sites, and we had to go with PennDOT regulations with a special white reflective paint on them so you can see them at night for visibility. They're two-sided, so you can see them both directions, and by placing them on top of the current street signs, it not only brings you aware of where you are, it also supports the whole idea that we've got this district, and you can look from one brown topper to the next and see where you are.
Wonderful. Now, I'm curious. I do know that you folks did a big fundraiser to
Yes.
get the first wave. Can people make donations?
Oh, we would love it if they would help us. Oh, yes, we are definitely accepting these donations. Our committee consists of Kathy Depta, who works at the SCCIA. And she is in charge of managing the finances, and donations can be sent to them. I have Barb Miller and Adrian Russell, also on the committee, that are part-time workers, part-time volunteers, and we all agree on the steps that we take with this. And we all said yes. The ticket raiser wasn't an easy fundraiser, but we're hoping that other people say, yeah, we'd like to have this on our corner. And if we do it, the next guy down the street might want to do it, and then the borough doesn't have to pay for that, and then the locals can pay for it. There are other things we can do also with signage money, like replace the posts besides the signs, but we'd like to go on to something with maybe the parks and the years that they were established, and other entryway signs to Scottdale, because it can draw tourism. There are people that just go from town to town looking for these districts.
Now, I do understand that you have had a couple really big contributors to your project.
Yes.
Would you like to
Yes,
let
for
the
sure.
folks know who has been generous?
Thank you so much. Doraloy gave us a very generous contribution, and so did the Scottdale Historical Society. And we're hoping that some of the other businesses in town might want to do that, especially those that are in the historic district. Doraloy and Optograph were brought to Scottdale by the SCCIA, and they have a certain history in this town, as do many of the other businesses that are in here.
Wonderful. Okay, so if somebody wants to make a contribution, then who do they get in touch with?
The SCCIA, and we will post that number for them.
We'll get that information for you folks.
Oh, and the Scottdale Borough also is going to post on their website the historic district. So if you're not sure where you live, if it's in the district on which corner, you can check that website, Scottdale Borough.
Awesome. All right. Anything else, Susan?
I can't think.
No? Okay. Well, we have a couple folks I want to say hi to real quick. They are fortunate enough to live right here in the historical district in a really cool house. Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Hawk, I'm going to step down. They also have a sign right here on their corner, and I believe that was one of the first sign toppers that were placed.
Yes, it was some of the originals. Joe and Marty Hawk have been host for the Scottdale Historical Society Christmas tours, the Veranda visits, and Joe's kind of semi-famous in Scottdale as an elementary teacher.
Okay, folks, well, this is a beautiful home. Tell me, what style of house is this, first of all?
This is a Second Empire Italianate.
Okay, now what makes it that?
Okay, the arch windows, the mansard roof.
Okay. And I understand right across the street here is a sister house?
Yeah, we refer to this as a sister house. The same gentleman that built our house, Samuel Judson Zurley, built the house across the street. Matter of fact, he built many homes here in town.
Oh, really?
He had a planing mill with Mr. Poole back in the late 1800s, and he built many of the fine homes here in town.
What circa is your house?
It was built in 1879 to 1880.
Okay, all right. And you were one of the first people that got one of the toppers. What do you think about this project?
Great, wonderful.
It's a good way to...
It defines the historical homes in the historical section of Scottdale.
Wonderful. Thank you, folks. Thank you very much for being a part of the show.
Thank you very much.
Okay, folks, well, for our second segment of the show, I am joined once again by Tom, who is the president of the Scottdale Area Historical Society. And Tom here is going to tell us a little bit about some of the fabulous houses here in Scottdale. Tom, thank you. Welcome back.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, so, start us out. First of all, let's get a little bit of history about Scottdale itself. Do you want to just give us a little bit of background?
Certainly. Scottdale was incorporated in 1874, but the town actually was founded much earlier. It used to be called Fountain Mills. And what had happened, the town was named after Thomas Scott, a Civil War general, and became president of the railroad, and of course the town was named in his honor. Scottdale really boomed because of the coal and coke industry. The largest seamless pipe in the world was manufactured here with the foundry. There was a sheet rolling mill out on the road going towards Dawson, and there was just so much industry and wealth within the valley, or the hub here between Scottdale and Everson. With all that wealth per capita, when you look at Westmoreland County, was the wealthiest town in Westmoreland County, and there was just so many very rich people affiliated with all the industry, and basically that's the reason why there's so many of the large grand homes built in the Victorian style.
Okay, now that's interesting because that's what we're going to start out with first is Victorian.
Absolutely.
But I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit here, quick. Approximately how many different styles of architecture, or how many different types of architecture are located here in Scottdale?
Well, actually, I don't have a count or a number on that, but we have every form of architecture in the United States except for Spanish. And whenever you get into the postmodern, the craftsman, and then whenever you look at the Victorian, some people just say it's a Victorian structure, but you have to remember it started in the 1860s till 1910. And so there were all these different movements of styles during that timeline. And so whenever you say Victorian, it's one big category, but yet right within Victorian, there are so many styles also, and it because of the timeline whenever the house was built. And in so many of the homes, different ones that you had selected for us to talk about, there are transition between some of the styles, because it isn't like, well, this particular type was built for this year and it stopped. It just transitioned into all the styles. So you'll see a lot of blends of architecture on the homes.
Cool. Okay, now we're going to start. When Tom and I are talking, you guys are going to actually see an example of what we're talking about. And we are going to start with Victorian, because whenever Tom and I talked about doing the show, Victorian is, when people think of old style homes, I think most people, Victorian immediately comes to mind. But what's really interesting, as Tom said, is there's so many different styles of the style of Victorian.
Absolutely.
I just think it's amazing. Now, the first house that we're going to be looking at, Tom is very familiar with, because he is lucky enough to call this place home.
Well, okay, we're going to talk about 101 Fifth Avenue, and it is one of Scottdale's oldest Queen Anne type style homes. It was built in 1882 by Andrew and Mary Bishop. It is a combination of stick style, where it has like a waistband or trim around the different levels of the house with all the trim connecting into it, and it also has some of the shingle style influence on the tower and the gables. There's not as much gingerbread up in the gables and so forth because it's a little bit earlier. It has the octagonal tower. It also has what's called a witch's cap roof. The home does have like 14 rooms and 2 baths, and it's just really a great example of Queen Anne architecture because of the tower, because of the gables, and because of the wraparound porch.
And you said you believe it's one of the oldest, if not the oldest, Victorian?
Queen Anne.
Oh, Queen Anne.
There's
okay.
older homes.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's one of the oldest Queen
Okay.
Anne homes, yes.
Okay. Now, we have a second style of Victorian we're going to be checking out.
Okay, 201 North Chestnut Street is called a Second Empire, or it's also called a mansard. And it's a French influence architecture. And whenever you look at the top floor or the third level with all the dormers, you'll notice that it has a very steep roof pitch or line. And it was done on purpose because in France, homes were taxed on all the rooms below the roof line.
Oh.
So what happened is they actually took a way to increase the room footage above the roof line and not have to pay taxes. And of course that carried over into the United States. Another great thing about this home is the stonework over the windows is called a lintel, and it's very decorative lintels because it's a masonry or brick home. And another thing about this home, it's very appropriate color schemes for the timeline. It was built circa 1885, but when you look at the windows with the really dark sashes, then the dark trim around the windows with the dark green with the body, very, very appropriate color scheme for the house. One of the very few homes that's truly painted for the era. And when you look at homes, especially in the 1880s and 90s, white was not in fashion at all, because before everything had natural pigments, where you got into that timeline, they started calling polychrome colors. And companies like Sherwin-Williams and other paint factories, manufacturers started, and putting all these colors on homes was really the very chic thing to do. So if you had a white house that was like, home-based paint colors, it just wasn't as in style at the time.
Okay, we have one more style Victorian.
Well, yes, we have 202 North Chestnut. It's called a shingle style house. It's also Romanesque. And if you look at the large gable front ends over the roof and so forth, it has more of an English design to it. And it's actually, the Romanesque plays on medieval design. So instead of being out of masonry, they use different types of shingles to give you all the different reveal shadow lines. And so typically when you look at this home, even when you look at the gable, there's more than one shingle type when you get above the second floor. And it was all done for texture and style, a little cleaner looking, not as much cutout work and gingerbread as some of the earlier Victorians.
Okay. Okay, I think we're moving on to Edwardian.
Yes. Okay, now we're looking at 410 Eleanor Avenue. Now that home was built around 1910, and it's actually Edwardian, or let's call it late Victorian.
Okay.
And really what it was had simpler lines, a lot less ornamentation. Again, it was English in design. It was starting to go into the classic revival style, which means you were looking at older period architecture for this influence. This style was really very popular from the ornate Victorians before you started arts and crafts. It just was a cleaner, simpler, more elegant look.
Oh, okay. So it was popular then.
Oh, absolutely,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Like I said, that's one of the ones I wasn't real familiar
Sure.
with. So there you go. See, I just have Victorian in my head. That's all.
Well, it's just that transition of styles. Designs kept getting a little cleaner as you turned around 1900, the turn of the century.
Okay. Now we have, I believe, another example of Edwardian.
Sure. Now, we're looking at Laux Avenue. Now, the home there was built in 1895, and it's a little bit more classic revival or Edwardian. So, like, when you look at the columns and so forth on the front porch, they're the Doric columns, they're cleaner. The capital at the top of the column is a lot less ornate, very clean. The barge boards up in the gables, the designs there are simpler. And they did a great job in painting that home because like those details are picked out with some of the Victorian colors. And it really makes the architectural details stand out on that home.
Cool.
It was really a good transition from Queen Anne to post-Victorian, meaning towards the end of the period.
Okay. All right. Now I'm not sure. Number 6.
Okay, number 6 is out on Broadway.
Okay.
700 South Broadway. Now that's a Colonial Revival. And what it is, it's looking back on all the styles of the homes. For example, when you think of Thomas Jefferson, when you think of Monticello, he picked all the designs up from Europe. And so whenever you're looking at this is looking back like at the Georgian period, the colonials. And some people see those big columns, they call them antebellum or whatever, but this is reflecting back.
Kind of like
and they
retro.
were looking exactly for the time for the Victorians. And so anyhow, as Victorian was becoming less popular, the cleaner lines, Colonial Revival was probably the biggest category of style in that 1905 timeline. The home was built in 1904, and it has, a great wraparound deck. You have the second floor porch. When you're looking at the columns, all that was done to impress. It was there for the grandeur.
And it does.
And exactly.
It's very
Today,
impressive.
It's still a wonderful, architectural style. People still build things in that colonial look or Georgian style.
Okay. Next.
Okay, the next home is 703 Arthur Avenue, and it is the Beaux-Arts or French Eclectic. And again, when you look at that house, it was built by Abram Laux. His father actually is the one who Victorianized the home here that we're at with the Laux Homestead. It was built in 1925, and when you look at the front entrance, you have like the rounded porch design. When you look at the front gables, when you look at the coins around the windows, that's the stone corners of the house, all very French influenced. And so whenever you're looking at some of the great homes in France, and this is really inspired by those designs.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
All right. Next.
Okay, the next home we're looking at is also on Arthur Avenue. It's 804, and it's one of Scottdale's most unique homes. It is the Lustron House. It is a prefabricated home. Lustern was a company in Columbus, Ohio. They built homes from 1948 through 1949, and they're stainless steel panels that are porcelain coated. They brought the homes in on truck. They would be assembled in up to 7 days. They would be complete because it was all prefab. And this was done after World War II when there was such a boom for housing. They saw this as a quick solution. Unfortunately, considering stick built, it was like 3 times the price.
Oh, really?
There were a little over 2,000 homes manufactured back at the time by the company, and today they do not all exist. So we're really lucky to have this example in town. What's also unique is the interior walls are also steel, porcelain coated. In the master bedroom, the metal vanity that
Oh
you
my
set up
gosh.
with mirror. The bathrooms, the original dishwasher and washer and dryer. They were the Thorbranders still in the house with the metal cabinets. So when you look at that house, it's truly a late 1940s architectural jewel.
And built to last.
Absolutely. Yeah, so it's a great little house, yes.
Okay, next.
Okay, the next house has a unique story about it, 602 Pittsburgh Street. And whenever the house was on one of our house tours for Christmas, and it showed about the home was built in the 1870s, but whenever you looked at the photography and so forth, I mean, this design of the house, it seemed Victorian. We did come across an image of the house that shows of the Italianate design. And this is a period of design, Victorian, from the 1860s through the 1870s. And what it is, the roof line and everything is so low, and you have the large balusters or spandrels across the gables. And in the antique shop where this image was shown is much the way the house looks today, with the higher Victorian roof line and dormers, and yet it's the same home. And so that really told a tale. Whenever you look at a house, you can't always say, well, it's of this period, because the house was remodeled. You know, it was done in the Victorian style. It was changed, much like the home here with the Laux Homestead. So bottom line, what's really cool about it is we were able to piece together the history because of the photography. The way the house looks today with a lot more gingerbread, that was added more in the 1990s by the family who owned it at the time, and they really gave it a lot more of the Victorian detail. So the house really has went through 3 transformations with its design.
That's crazy. And that's neat you were able to trace it back to its roots.
Well, it was really great because when you look at the details like the bay window and the different designs, they are the very same structure, but it's just that whole roof line and everything just totally changed the dynamic of the house, the design.
Well, before we go on to our 10th and last photo, I did want to say, Tom was showing some old photos here. He and I chatted briefly before we started. If any of you folks have some of these great old photos of some homes from town,
we'd love to have them.
There you go.
And if you have any photos of your homes or the families that lived in them, a lot of times people drop photos off here at the house, and it's ironic. Sometimes we'll open the door and there'll be an envelope with a lot of pictures or a box. And if you can give us information of who they are or you, we'd love to thank people because we love these surprises, but sometimes it's hard to learn all the details. But we always are looking for any of the history of town. Thank you.
And we are at 527 North Chestnut?
That is correct.
That's the home of the Laux house.
Yes.
Okay. Our final house is a really cool one.
Yeah, the last house is a subterranean. It was built by Dave Baker and his wife Fran. The home was built in 1990, and it is a true subterranean home. The only thing exposed to the outdoors is the front facade of the house. The roof is 18 inches underground, as well as all the back walls. The whole front of the house is glass, and they say, like at night during a full moon, you can walk from one end of the house to the other without even needing a light. There are like about 9 rooms. There's like 3 baths, and they said it is so quiet. It's so easy to heat and cool, and Dave said that whenever he was a young fellow, like 18, 19, he really got just totally enthused with subterranean or underground homes, and that's really what caused him to build the house.
That's so cool.
And he said really within the area there is one over near Bridgeport there by the dam. It looks out over the dam. Was built by the Brown family, and then really you need to go to Uniontown or so forth or Somerset to find the next. So it's not like there's a ton of subterranean homes in the area. Just another example that Scottdale has basically just about every style of home.
It's crazy, and it's right here in your own backyard. Easy to drive around, and I want to point out too here, this blew over here a little bit.
Yeah.
Tom actually is going to have these. These are going to be located on the porch here at the Laux house, and they are walking tour maps that free.
Absolutely,
Free
yes.
that you can take and open up here, and there's maps, there's descriptions of some of the houses. It's really awesome, and they are going to be located here on the porch.
Right.
Tom's going to leave them here, and I did.
I was going to say this was done by the Fall Festival History group, and they did a tremendous job with the write-ups on each of the properties. And it's a great walking tour. It's about a 4-block radius, and it gives you so many of the examples of homes, many more than what we had time to talk about today.
Yeah, it's we could do a series on the different houses here in Scottdale. But if you haven't been, Scottdale's a very easy walk. There's a couple, maybe some sidewalks with some routes coming up, but that's just, you'll have that.
That's the charm and character.
But there's no hills or anything that you have to, worry about. And as Tom said, you can pretty much park here and just take a nice leisurely walk. Check out some of the homes, because some of these homeowners really have taken a lot of pains to keep things original. As Tom said, the coloring, but then some of them have added some extra touches that made them even that much more special.
Yes.
Well, Tom, thank you. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed being here with us. I loved having you again.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, sure.
We appreciate it.
And again, remember, folks, 527, you can pick up your own map. You can check out some of the architectural styles here at your own leisure. Well, thank you. Thank you, folks. And ready? Okay. All right. Remember, folks, keep smiling, keep dreaming, and keep watching.